Picture a dusty little town in West Texas, the kind of place where nothing ever seems to change and nobody ever seems to leave. A young woman steps out of a small roadside motel, glancing around before slipping toward a parked car. Before she can even reach it, the driver pulls up right beside her, gets out, and leaves the door hanging open behind him. It's the kind of careless mistake that changes a life in an instant. Without thinking twice, she jumps behind the wheel. When the driver realizes what's happening and tries to stop her, she pulls a gun on him and speeds off, leaving him standing in the middle of the road. Once she's clear of the town, she rips off the wig covering her real hair, reaches into the stolen wallet sitting on the passenger seat, and pockets the cash inside. Her name is Caroline, and stealing a car at gunpoint is nowhere near the strangest thing she's done that day. She pulls into a supermarket, picks up a few items, and heads to the register. While paying, she runs a little trick on the cashier, asking for change in smaller bills, then changing her mind and asking him to break a large bill instead, offering him an extra dollar for the trouble. It seems harmless enough, so he agrees. But Caroline keeps swapping bills back and forth over and over until the poor man completely loses track of how much money has actually changed hands. By the time she walks out, she's quietly pocketed far more than she paid for. She repeats the same trick at store after store, city after city, before finally arriving at a bus station, ready to leave this chapter of her life behind for good. To understand how a gas station clerk from a nothing town became a woman capable of all this, we need to rewind the clock 3 months. 3 months earlier, Carolyn is working behind the counter of a small gas station in a quiet Texas town, the kind of job she's held since she was old enough to work. Her father, Hank, has raised her alone since she was less than a year old, back when her mother walked out of their lives without a word of explanation. Caroline dreams, quietly and constantly, of leaving this town behind and finding her way to South Carolina, where she believes her mother has been living all these years. It's a dream she's never had the courage or the means to actually chase. Everything changes the day a drifter named Oliver walks into the gas station's attached store to grab some snacks before continuing his trip. The store owner, always looking to chat with a new face, asks where he's headed. Oliver tells him he plans to stick around the area for a couple of days before moving on. As he's about to leave, the owner calls him back, realizing he accidentally handed Oliver too much change. Oliver thanks him for pointing it out, then asks the owner to swap the smaller bills for one larger bill instead, tossing in an extra dollar to make it worth his while. The owner agrees without a second thought. What he doesn't realize is that Oliver has just run a short change scam on him right in front of his own register, walking away with more money than he should have. Caroline, however, has been watching the entire exchange with total focus. The moment Oliver steps outside, she follows him, catching up quickly and telling him she saw exactly what he did. Oliver, impressed rather than embarrassed, hands her cash on the spot to keep her quiet. What actually throws Caroline off isn't the money, it's the fact that he already knows her name, even though they've never met. Oliver simply walks away without explaining, leaving her more curious than she was before. Once her shift ends, Caroline heads to the local bar to unwind, and there he is again, this time working the same short change trick on an unsuspecting waitress. Caroline walks straight over and sits down beside him. When she asks how he knew her name, Oliver finally explains that he'd spotted a staff schedule taped near the gas station counter with her name listed on it. He asks her, genuinely, what she actually wants out of life. After a moment of thought, Caroline admits she's been dreaming about leaving town for South Carolina. When Oliver asks why there specifically, she tells him her mother has been living there for years. She then asks what brings him through a place like this, and he tells her he's only ever passing through, that small towns are where he meets the most interesting people. Charmed by his easy confidence, Caroline offers to show him the one place in town that actually means something to her. They drive out together to a quiet lake on the edge of town. Without warning, Caroline steps out of the car and starts undressing right there on the spot, before leaping off a high ledge into the water below. Oliver, startled, rushes over expecting the worst, only to realize she's simply jumped in for a swim and is now calling for him to join her. He strips down and dives in after her. Treading water together, she finally asks him directly what he actually does for a living. Oliver tells her she already saw it for herself. She presses further, asking what happens if someone ever catches him for good. With total confidence, he tells her that's never going to happen. Confused, since she herself just caught him hours earlier, Caroline reminds him of that fact. That's when Oliver admits the truth. He wanted her to catch him. It was never an accident. The next morning, her father Hank asks where she disappeared to the night before. Rather than being angry, he seems almost relieved, admitting he'd half convinced himself she'd finally packed up and left for Ecuador, an old running joke from her child. Years ago, whenever young Caroline misbehaved, Hank used to threaten to run off to Ecuador himself, and the joke stuck between them ever since. Caroline asks if he's ever seriously considered leaving this town behind for a fresh start somewhere else. Hank tells her without hesitation that he never could. He's seen enough hardship in his life already, and this quiet town is the only place he's ever truly felt at peace. That night, Oliver takes Caroline out again. Over drinks, she asks if he ever feels guilty about the people he cons. He admits that he does, but only when it's small, local businesses, places like the one her own family run. Big corporations are a different story entirely, he explains, since stealing from a massive company only ever touches wealthy shareholders who'll never feel the loss. It's in this conversation that Caroline finally opens up about her mother, admitting she left when Caroline was barely a year old, and that she's spent her whole life since then wondering why. Oliver tells her something that clearly catches her off guard, that everyone in this town might know her name, but not one of them seems to actually know what a genuinely good person she is underneath it all. The two of them dance together that night, growing closer with every passing minute. By morning, Caroline has made up her mind. She's leaving town, and she's leaving with Oliver. Hank doesn't try to stop her. Instead, he hands her an envelope stuffed with cash to help her get started and makes Oliver promise, man to man, that he'll look out for her on the road. Oliver gives his word. Once they're on the road together, Oliver becomes Caroline's teacher in every sense. He starts with the short change scam itself, walking her through the mechanics until she's running it smoothly on shop after shop across several towns. From there, he teaches her how large department stores work against themselves, explaining that security only ever stops one member of a group walking out the door, no matter how many people are actually involved. Together, they walk out of a mall with stolen merchandise tucked away, using the money and the goods to fund a lavish dinner at a nice restaurant that same night. Leaving the restaurant, Oliver reaches over and wipes something off Caroline's cheek. A small, tender gesture, except while he's doing it, he's quietly sliding the bracelet off her wrist without her even noticing. It's her first real lesson in pickpocketing. From there, he teaches her how to steal cars in a matter of seconds. Skills she picks up fast, clearly a natural. One evening at a bar, Oliver finally lets his guard down and tells her about his own father, who abandoned the family when Oliver was just 10 years old. He describes finding a torn letter in the trash not long after. An invitation from his father for a camping trip together, one his mother had thrown away specifically to keep the two of them apart. It's the moment, he tells her, that he stopped trusting anyone completely. Sensing the weight settling over him, Caroline lightens the mood with a challenge, betting she can finish her drink before he finishes his, on the condition that he isn't allowed to touch his own cup at all. She downs her drink in seconds, then flips her empty glass upside down directly over his, trapping his drink underneath and winning the bet outright. Oliver, delighted by the trick, admits she's sharper than he gave her credit for. That's when Caroline reveals she's already lifted the watch clean off his wrist without him feeling a thing. The next day, on a train, Caroline spots a wealthy-looking businessman named Henry sitting nearby. She deliberately bumps into him, apologizes politely, and walks away, his wallet now sitting in her pocket. She passes it straight to Oliver, who pulls out the cash and credit cards before making his move. He approaches Henry directly, claiming he found the wallet lying abandoned back at the station. Henry is thrilled at first, until he checks and realizes his cash and cards are missing entirely. Oliver plays it perfectly, asking casually which bank Henry uses, then revealing that he happens to work in banking himself, and that Henry's exact bank has recently been targeted by a card theft ring capable of draining an account within just 3 hours. Henry, badly rattled, briefly remembers the woman who bumped into him earlier, but Oliver reassures him and offers to call the bank on his behalf. He hands Henry the phone, where Caroline, on the other end, poses convincingly as a bank representative, walking Henry through a series of security questions and pulling every piece of his personal information straight out of him in the process. Armed with everything he needs, Oliver walks into Henry's actual bank, impersonates him completely, and walks out with $100,000 in hand. Riding high off their biggest score yet, Caroline decides she wants more, and this time, she's not thinking about wallets or storefronts. She wants to rob an actual bank. Oliver agrees, but insists on doing it properly, mapping out a full escape plan using multiple swapped cars along the way to throw off any pursuit. On the day of the first robbery, Caroline walks into a bank disguised in a wig and sunglasses, holding the tellers at gunpoint while demanding they fill a bag with cash. Outside, Oliver waits behind the wheel, monitoring a police scanner, ready to honk the horn the instant he hears sirens on the radio. The signal comes fast, and they speed away together. It's only once they're clear that Caroline realizes, in the panic of the moment, she left the entire bag of stolen cash sitting inside the bank. Oliver laughs it off completely, telling her it happens to everyone the first time, and that their luck is bound to turn. It does. Their next job, across the state line in Georgia, goes exactly to plan. And from there, the robberies keep coming, one after another, town after town, until the two of them are living an almost unbelievable life, sleeping surrounded by literal piles of cash. One afternoon, Caroline calls her father from a payphone, only to spot a police officer nearby holding a sketch of her in disguise. She panics and cuts the call short before she can be recognized. Back at their hotel that same night, a young employee delivering food happens to glance at a newspaper sitting beside Caroline, one showing her photo next to a wig and a bag that look exactly like the ones sitting right there in the room. Oliver notices the boy's stare linger just a little too long. He grabs him, pins him against the wall, and checks his identification to confirm exactly who he is. Terrified, the boy insists he won't say a word to anyone. Oliver still hands him money to guarantee his silence and takes down his home address as leverage, making sure the threat is understood clearly. The two of them flee the hotel immediately after. After a long stretch on the road, they finally arrive outside a house in South Carolina, the address belonging to Caroline's mother. Nobody answers the door, but a neighbor passing by tells her that Deborah is almost always found down at the local bar these days, struggling with drinking. Caroline finds her there, sits down beside her, and buys her a drink before gently asking if she ever had any children. Deborah studies her for a moment, then admits the truth without a trace of guilt, that she knew from the very moment she got pregnant that she wasn't cut out for motherhood, and that's exactly why she left right after giving birth. As Caroline struggles to process the weight of it, Deborah only mocks her further, offering nothing close to comfort. Devastated, Caroline walks out and tells Oliver she needs to leave this town behind immediately. With the police clearly closing in on their trail, Caroline decides she wants enough money to disappear from the country entirely, which means pulling off one final, much bigger bank job. During the robbery, a police officer draws his weapon on her inside the bank. Oliver knocks him unconscious from behind and pulls her out just in time. A car chase erupts through the streets. They abandon the vehicle mid-chase, cut straight through a restaurant, and steal a second car out back, with Caroline hiding in the trunk since police are actively searching for a man and woman traveling together. Later, on a quiet highway, a police officer pulls them over. Oliver quickly explains that Caroline is simply feeling unwell because she's pregnant. The officer offers to call for an ambulance, but she declines, insisting she's fine. He checks their forged identification and clears them without issue, until he asks to see the vehicle's registration. Oliver claims it's sitting in the glove compartment. The moment the officer turns his back to check, Oliver draws his gun and shoots him dead. Caroline is horrified, furious with him for crossing a line they can never come back from, but there's no time to stop and process. They're forced to keep moving. At a gas station further down the road, Caroline sneaks off to a payphone to call her father one last time, only for a police officer to pick up instead, telling her flatly that they already know everything about her and her partner. She hangs up immediately, then dials back to reach her father directly. He begs her, desperately, to turn herself in before it's too late. Oliver interrupts before she can say much more, and she lies to him on the spot, insisting her father knows absolutely nothing. With police checkpoints closing in around them, they take shelter in a roadside bar. While Oliver steps away to grab drinks, he catches a news broadcast on the television showing both their faces, now officially wanted fugitives. He tells her firmly not to look at the screen, reassuring her they only need to lay low for a few days before securing new fake papers and finally leaving the country for good. They share one last dance together. Then the sirens arrive, surrounding the building completely. In that final moment, Oliver tells her for the very first time that he loves her, before shoving her away from him and firing a shot into the air. The gunshot sends the entire bar into chaos, giving Caroline the cover she needs to slip out unnoticed amid the panicked crowd. Police storm the building and order Oliver to drop his weapon. He refuses outright, raising his gun and firing back at them instead, in what is unmistakably a deliberate choice to die rather than surrender. Caroline flees alone, utterly shattered by what Oliver just sacrificed for her sake. This brings us back to the very scene that opened this story. Caroline stepping outside that same small motel, stealing a stranger's car at gunpoint, and driving off on pure instinct alone. She makes her way to a bus station and calls her father one final time, deliberately letting him hear the boarding announcement for a bus heading to South Carolina. Fully aware that police are almost certainly listening in right beside him, she tells him this is the very last time she'll ever call, then ends it for good. In reality, she checks into a hotel far outside the city and hears on the news that police are combing every bus station in the region searching for her, proof her decoy worked exactly as planned. She changes her hairstyle completely, has a fresh set of identification papers made, and makes her way to Florida. At an airline counter, she books a one-way ticket out of the country entirely. When the agent hands her back her change, Caroline simply can't help herself, running the exact same short change scam Oliver taught her all those months ago. One final time on a total stranger, completely alone now. It's a quiet, fitting final note. Everything he ever gave her, she's kept for good, even after losing him. That's the full story of Carolina Caroline, a small-town love story that spirals into a nationwide crime spree, and a reminder that some habits once learned never really leave us. If you enjoyed this recap, hit subscribe for more movie